Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I thought we'd do something really quite special for today and talk about some horror films that I had in my collection. And there's one typical horror films I wanted to share out firstly because since it's the month of October and it's almost getting closer towards the Halloween, so I thought one of the basics I could probably start off is kind of the films I really enjoy and actually find it very obvious to pick these up. And we're going to talk about none other than the Scream trilogy, not only based on all the main three movies, but also their fourth film, Scream 4. Today, on Spread More Green Horror Reviews. Welcome back. Yeah, let's talk about Scream, shall we? Now, what can I say about Scream movies? Well, to be honest, I thought originally my exposure based off these Scream movies are quite not really excitement. And yeah, they're kind of thrilling and actually a lot more scary looking towards basically have a bit of a drug killer trying to kill basically these conceived teenagers, and of course basically the main character is basically Sidney Prescott, played by Neil Cameron, who is basically well known basically other films basically back in the early 90s, and really a well-spun performer. But my experience basically watching these movies, well, to be honest, I thought they were really kind of like somewhat a little kind of horror, just a little bit, just kind of a little price and driven, who basically is the killer, who is basically trying to plot based off all these murders and everything else. And to be fair, I really find them very enjoyable and actually a lot more terrifying just a little bit. But to be fair, I never really kind of got around to basically watching Scream movies because, well, I never really got really into the horror franchise and everything else. Like any kind of like horror movies I watch, which I usually don't really watch. Not because I'm afraid of them, it's just because I just don't usually have much time to actually find my time to watch these horror movies. But to be fair, I have to say all of the main four movies are actually basically properly or what should I say, more as kind of like the mythology of a trilogy of the continuum basis of the horror franchise. That back in the mid 70s and 80s, they were horror films was really trying to tone down so bit for some reason, and they usually would try to, of course, basically bring the genre of horror film back and basically in the franchise. So with a great writer, what's his name actually? With a great basic approach of the writer who basically directed all the main movies. Well, basically the first film, and naturally bring a horror based back in the genre, back in the film. I thought originally, to my sense, the base of all the main four movies are quite rich in the best of the trilogy, because in the first film, of course, you have the follow base of the psychopath killer. The second film, you have basically have another basic psychopath killer who is basically his mother. The third film, I really have to say, wasn't really spectacular, but I think in the third film, you get a feeling basically of the actual portrayed as a killer, but actually being not it is. As the fourth film, well, I will say the fourth, it's quite a little different, because while the first, second, third are followed as a trilogy, the fourth, I will say it's not quite as really excitement, because you do have the prerogatives of the killer basically coming back to, of course, basically terrorize basically of Sidney and basically her friends, and basically try to basically get to close to Sidney to kill. But when I find the fourth film very difficultly, it's because the killer itself is not really excitement. I mean, there is some suspense which you could find ways about how can I say, more just basically driven basically towards as original. But to some strange reason, it's not really obvious for the for the fourth, basically coming back and having the main principal cast, play that role of characters based along with the new characters. So, what I think about all of them? Well, generally, I marathon all of them, and I really find them very well thrilling, and they actually are very well interesting films. But to my extent, as of course, as a based on myself as a movie home-based person myself, I think originally they actually really drove us to it because you do have some sense of basically what originally the plot is basically telling you. Like I said before, the first film was basically described basically as the killer trying to recopy basically of the horror movies back in the early 70s and 80s. The second film, of course, is basically following up the killer while basically the primary killer is basically just on the loose and trying to, of course, kill the main character. The third film, of course, you have the primary killer who is somewhat basically her brother, his brother. And it's pretty obvious that it's kind of like a very obvious why in the third wasn't really thrilled me too much. But to be fair, I really wasn't really over the press of it, but I find it very well entertaining because not only that in the third film you get basically of course with basically guest stars like James, Silent Bob, of course, because they were basically producing in that film. And really, it's pretty obvious of that what it is. But what I have to say about most of the fourth, it was quite like you got very well guest stars in the film, and you got very well known basically performers. But the fourth, which is kind of like really kind of odd, because at the end, I don't want to give away spoilers and everything else. I don't want to give away basically the ending film of the ending. The ending is quite a little difficult because basically in all the main of course three Scream movies, you have the killer basically being killed, and then at the end it basically all depends basically the killer basically comes back to life, and for one last basically frightening scare. But the fourth is kind of really difficult because I will say that the killer was supposed to be dead originally, basically, and basically come back from for one last scare originally for some reason. But the fourth ending. It's quite really just puts me in a very troubling moment to it. Now, then we're gonna make a kind of like a fifth or maybe a sixth Scream movie. Then I would probably understand there won't be that chance for it to how they plot towards it. So, yeah. But to be fair, it's pretty obvious that you have, of course, got the director who did Friday Nightmare on Elm Street movies. You also have a great participant cast and everything else. And to be fair, it wasn't really drubbing as I thought it was. But to be fair, I marathoned all the movies. And I personally enjoy them because originally, watching them as back and again, originally, it's pretty obvious watching them. It's really kind of thrilling to me because, originally I'm not the kind of guy who would like the slasher, basically horror fest, originally, because you have the human being as the killer and everything else. But I like the suspense of basically seeing of how each character is trying to find the killer originally, and who is basically the killer, basically trying to kill all these basically victims. Which was kind of really odd to me because at the beginning, basically at the beginning of the second film, you do see some way which of the killer is trying to kill the victim, and to get the close to Sidney Prescott character, and it's pretty obvious that Richard was just kind of like obvious that of course, of all the main of all the four movies. You do have Sidney be the main character, being the hero, basically trying to, of course, get away from the killer and everything else, and trying to be prevented to survive. So you have that originally major dream. But I think the only thing I wasn't really kind of over to is basically the other main characters we're seeing in the fourth film. Like, of course, you have Patrick. I forgot what's his name, but you know what I mean. The guy who basically did many of the movies, like basically pronounced originally, but also you have the two main basic police cops in the fourth film, while they just basically are just suddenly getting themselves killed. I mean, there was very well just why that it's just obvious, kind of pretty driven based of that Richard for some reason. But yeah, I just never find the fourth really kind of good, but hey, it does have some proper moments to it, and it got really some well, basically guest stars in the film. So you probably want to know what's inside base of these sets. Well, basically individual Scream movies, of course, the three main movies. You do have, of course, featurettes and behind the scenes, basically of making the films and everything else. This is actually the, of course, the 3 disc, well, actually the 4 disc edition. This is actually the box set version where you get, of course, not only basically get the 3 main Scream movies, but you also get a bonus disc called Still Scream and Scream Inside the Story, which I was very kind of interesting about how the Scream franchise got to really popularity. But what I was very kind of interested basically of that is because Still Scream is actually a retrospective of all the basic scary movie retrospective film, which explains of how the Scream films got to really popularity and has to really be more, a lot more censorship. So that's a really interesting set for that version. It is a cost of 5-disc set, but it actually is a 4 disc. So it's actually a 4 disc set, which is got, of course, the makers of the covers. Of course, you got the first Scream movie, second Scream movie, and then you have the third Scream movie, and of course you have the bonuses, which is nice, because, and they're all in high definition, which is, well, of course, as I'm mistaken, because the only thing, if you want to get the, of course, the 5-disc edition with basically with the, of course, the bonus disc, definitely pick this up, because in a simple edition, like, on the DVD edition, you do have the basic of the making of the Scream movie, and basically, casting screen tests and everything else, Richard. But the great thing about that, Richard, is that you have a dimensional mode that you can actually cut your own basic Scream parts in all the 3 movies. So if you want this edition, I think we're going to get the Blu-ray edition, because it's nice version and everything else. And on the, of course, the 4th film, you have, of course, this the plain old regular Blu-ray disc with no eco case, which is quite nice. And in terms of special features, we have, of course, feature commentary by director Wes Craven and the cast, and of course the cast. Also, you have deleted scenes and extra scenes, the actual opening, the actual ending, which is kind of really obvious why the actual ending. Yeah, I kind of find the actual ending a lot more better than the previous theatrical ending, reaching the end of the film. So that's pretty kind of nice, Rich, right there. And also you have, of course, gag reel and the making of Scream 4. And that's pretty much it, Rich, I know of. I didn't have, well, it did come with a bonus, Rich, where you did have a bonus add-on. You could basically have a feature of game on your iPhone or Android for that, Richard. But of course, Richard, that's pretty similar to that. So, what I think about Scream movies, I think they always are pretty well German entertainment films. If you are, of course, a horror fest guy or just an average moviegoer, just like watch some horror fest films, never recommend you pick up Scream. Really, it dribbles into your mind, Richard, very much. And of course, there's not much more I can say about it because it's already been talked about already. So that's my little web perspective about that. So that is it for me and you for now. But there's still more horror films I want to basically talk about. So since I talked about the Scream movies, we're going to talk about a little bit more. So until next time, until then, this is Sarah Brown. Thank you for watching, and sayonara.